All right. As you can see, the program is going to be, it's running trains, a scheduled or an extra in an operating session. Of course, my railroad, the Minneapolis and Northland Railroad Company. So as you, when you come over to my house and you're going to be part of the crew, first you can take a look at what up on top is the crew board and the number of trains. This is just, and we'll look at it more in detail. You'll see in a minute. And we see you'll sign up, and we usually do it. I draw. There's a number. I have a can with, like, let's say, like bingo numbers, and you draw numbers. A lot of places when you go, they use cards to develop seniority. But anyway, so we're going to look at, if you on the crew board, you see I put Ron's name for running a scheduled train, and we got Greg down for running a Randolph. But what you're going to see here are the trains we're going to, first one. So in an operating section on my railroad, the Minneapolis Northland Railroad Company, we run about 14 trains, which you see here. You have the scheduled trains up on top and the extras on the bottom. Sometimes we will run 16 trains or so because we could run a second Randolph, which is in there. We'll run later to look at a second Little Chicago turn, or also because of the number of cars that are that night. So anyway, here's the board. We'll take a look at train number 2, which is the Morning Star, and which goes out of Northfield. So because it's a scheduled train, it's obviously on the timetable. My railroad, we use train order and timetable operation. And you'll see that train number 2 is going to, if you look down on the bottom, you see Northfield. It's going to leave at 6:10, and it's going to arrive in Minneapolis about 8 o'clock. You also notice the blue arrow down there. You notice that the eastward trains on the timetable have superiority over the westward trains. Okay, so now once you get a crew call and you're asked to go out and take the train out, in this case, here's Jeff and Randy. They're part of my regular crew. Jeff would be getting the orders for train number 2 from Randy, who has made up the train. Here's what's in that pack that Jeff has obtained. You see there's a timetable for him, so he don't have to grab there is a timetable at every station location on the railroad. However, to make it easier for the operators, you notice they've got the timetable is right there, a small one. And also, if you notice, there's some letters in the letter B, and it's because this train is going to be making LCL stops along the way. You also notice there's I try to follow prototype paperwork. So you have a clearance form A, and you have your orders for this particular train, which you see is, of course, there was train order number 11. Yeah, so 2 is scheduled from Northfield to Minneapolis, and you also have a slow order for Preachers and for Susan's Curve. Also in that packet, you will have a motive power card, which tells you the number to dial up on the throttles, and we'll take a look at those later. But yeah, it tells you the engine number you need, and also in this case, we'll have one coach. It's 123, and we're having an LCL car. And you'll see during the presentations, it isn't always. In the process of putting this presentation together, there are about 4 LCL cars on the railroad. So the number here, which is 5009, probably later you'll see 7 or you'd see 12. So just to be aware. But okay, here's the train that's train number 2. On my railroad, the trains are smaller because it's not a really large railroad. By the old NMRA standard, it was considered medium size. But so my train number 2 is a Doodlebug, the coach, and that LCL car. Now, The throttles, once you you got to choose the throttle. I use the Digitrack system as on the railroad. We have UT4s, which are plugins. If an operator wants, I do have throttles wireless. Also, I installed Wi-Fi on the railroad last year. So if you have a lot of people today are using Wi-Fi and they have it on their smartphones, this is the Y throttle is on the left side. The other throttle, which I have a couple of, are the TCS Wi-Fi throttles. And I'm old school. I like my knob rather than the slider. So when I'm operating trains, I prefer the knob. Therefore, the TCS Wi-Fi if I'm going to use it. So once you have your throttle, you've now pick up the phone and you've got your train pack. You pick up the phone. Here, Matt, and you're going to see we're going to have several operators because, like I said, photographs were taken over several sessions. But here, Matt would be, as you would, you called now the dispatcher, and you're in the process, of course, of OSing, telling him that you're ready to depart. Here's Don. He's in the dispatcher office, and the dispatcher office is part of my work area, which you see my desk is over there in the back behind him, and he's preparing the train sheet, and he's to get ready for the session here. But when your phone rings, he's going to pick it up, and he's going to ask you for some information and record you on the train sheet. And here's the train sheet. Now, a couple sessions ago, when the timetable was, the gentleman with the timetable mentioned OSing. OSing is the process of reporting a train, but what it really means is on sheet. OS came from on sheet. And so when you report to the dispatcher, as you would hear via phone, he is going to record your train. You see the red arrow. Number two, he knows you got engine 70, you've got 2 cars. Obviously, we don't have a caboose, but we will later in another session. Now, this is where a sheet that, as you see, as you go to look at train 2, this was recorded during the section, the movements as the operator, whether Matt or Jeff, when they OS to the dispatcher. Also, is OSing important? I have this particular sign hanging in my railroad area, and as you read it, you may know where you are and what you are doing, and God may know where you are and what you are doing. But the dispatcher, if he doesn't know where you are and what you're doing, I hope you're on very good terms with God. Anyway, you understand, and I remind the guys, and this is their reminder, you make sure you OS during the op session. All right, the dispatcher also has a train board. Mine is nothing fancy. Some railroads you go to, they'll be quite fancy. Mine is quite simple. You see, it's just the diagram of the railroad, and it's magnets with the trains. And as I said, there's usually, our usual session is about 14 trains. It can be a few more. Okay, now we're going to take that train number 2. So you've done your OSing, the dispatcher is giving you clearance out. So you can leave. You notice that leave time is, of course, down there you see it at 6:10. So because you're a scheduled train, you're going to have to use the fast clock. And you notice in this in the upper left-hand corner is the fast clock. On my railroad, we run on a 4-to-1 ratio, and you will notice that the train is going to leave on time. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, at 6:10, we're going to pull out on the road. So we have moved on the railroad, and we make our first station stop, and these are fairly quick stops. And what you're doing, you notice on the platform there is LCL, would be products that would be either loaded or at this point unloaded. We're coming from Northfield, and I'll explain. Normally, the LCLs, when they move Um, they're coming out of Minneapolis. They're moving west. They moved to the end of the line. Northfield sit overnight, and they're moving along the way with various trains through towns. So we are now taking it sat in Northfield at LCL car overnight. It was unloaded and loaded, and now it's loaded for Minneapolis. We make additional pickups along the way, because you remember this was basically a lot of times was like the mail, or this was the delivery service, the UPS of its day. Anyway, we'll move on. Of course, you hit that. Not all of my stations. There, just a couple of them are flag stops. I have in the past made mention that my railroad, I try to follow the Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern. And so as they did, they were a 70-mile bridge route, as mine claims to be, and a lot of little flag stops, as this one at Tunnel City West. So again, you do make your LCL stop and passengers. Little Chicago is the major town division point on the railroad. So at this point in time, here, all we are doing is making a quick stop. Of course, the passenger exchange and the LCL is just stuff at the station. However, if you were a westbound train, there's the freight houses down a little bit further. On a westbound train, there's actually westbound coming obviously out of Minneapolis would at this point exchange the LCL car if you were an operator on that train. And here it is backing into the station. And by the way, on my railroad, just as a side light, you notice down there's a few rocks, and there's kind of a small monument. That is the gold spike of the railroad that was put in many years ago. And you kind of see that little gold spike sitting there. But anyway, so the LCL car that's where it would be positioned and where it would be loaded, unloaded. In our case, back to our train. The next one is a small flag stop here at Bass Lake Junction. On the M&NS, this structure is a prototype that is still actually standing today. It's been restored. On the M&NS, this structure stood at Orchard Gardens. So it small flag stop, and as we are doing, it was passengers as well as LCL. Here also, which you couldn't see here, if you know, you can't see behind the doodle bug, but you notice if you see here, there's a farmer sitting with milk cans. The other thing is there's a milk peddler out of Minneapolis that picks up milk cans at the various stops. You might have saw at some of the other platforms, and that train eventually ends up in Northfield. The milk cans would be unloaded, and on an afternoon freight, then empty milk cans that have been washed, cleaned after, and they would be now loaded in a refrigerator and dropped back off on one of the afternoon trains the farmers would then have come pick up their milk cans for the next day. Now, also, once you get past, we're approaching Minneapolis, there are signals on the railroad, very simple. You notice the aspect here is red. There is only two aspects here. They are called call-on signals. Any train you run, in even this case, the scheduled train, you still have to stop for a red signal, pick up the phone. You notice there is a call box over there, but you would pick up the phone on the fascia and call the dispatcher. He would notify the Minneapolis operator, and in turn, you would get a green signal. As an operator on the railroad, there is a timer board on those signals, so you have 12 seconds to make the green light and proceed. Should you miss it, you have to repeat the procedure. So we get some operators once in a while talking, bebop and bebop, and so they'll miss a light, so they go through the procedure a second time. But once you proceed, you're approaching Minneapolis. As on the M&NS, I have what's called the Sooner Y, and in the Minneapolis, even though it was the major yard, they did not have a turntable. It was on the other end in Northfield, but that's on my railroad, same thing. We have the Sooner Y, where this train eventually, when it hits the yard, will be turned and turned into a afternoon train to return. Now here we are approaching the local station. Anyway, we're there, and the train will move down to Chestnut Street Yard, and that's the yard office there. You'll move down the yard, and the operator will eventually turn that train back on that Sooner Y for an afternoon run. In the meantime, you will you terminate here, train number 2. Now you as the operator, the train will terminate. You turn your train pack over to the yard operator. He will take the card, as you see there, or the waybill. You'll take the waybill, and you notice it's for that LCL card. If you were the yard master here, just so you have a feel, up on the wall, you can see that the LCL, the car goes to the freight house. If you notice the red arrow there, then so the operator here, or the yard master, will then spot the car at the freight house. The 2 tracks. So you see my LCL cars, and if you caught the one before when we were at Bass Lake or Little Chicago, you notice mine are the red door, have the orange door, and orange band on the door, and of course that's the merchandise service and the LCL cars. Mine are X29s for what it's worth on the railroad. So then also that yard master, now there is a pocket for LCL cars at Minneapolis, where of course in Little Chicago, where there was, I said if I was a westbound would exchange, and there is on the other end. The reason is there's a separate pocket for these, is rather than get mixed up with all the other cars, it's easy to find for the yard master when he needs to grab the LCL card. So that would be now the end of train 2. So now you've now run a scheduled train, but now we'll look at an extra on the railroad. And we're going to look at, I before presented for this group, when I did the Randolph extension, the town, some of the, and the industry there. Here's the train now. Excuse me. This is the train that runs every single session. And at times, if there are too many cars, we run a Randolph second turn. But so anyway, you notice that you're going to work the CGW interchange when you get to Randolph, and you will work the industries there. Here's the route you're going to take. Blue arrow, you're leaving Northfield, as number 2 did. We're going up what's called on my railroad, the High Line. That's the blue pattern. And we come down, you're going to eventually, truly on the M&NS, this was a full branch that ran out of Northfield. However, my railroad, I could not do the complete, so I have to use some of my normal main line. And so until you get to where the red arrow is, which is Tunnel City East, or we call it was where you actually hit the branch that goes off to Randolph. So here again, I got the same photo I used before. As it was an extra, you would again get your orders. However, this time when you pick up the orders in the train pack, you notice there is the special instruction card. They actually existed on some railroads. You notice that the train size, it tells you it's 8. It tells you you're on the branch line, and you enter it at Tunnel City, which we looked at a little while ago, and you have to set the turnout, etc. We'll go through that. You again have a clearance form, and you have the orders, saying you got to order, in this case, it was 26, Randolph to run extra and return to Northfield. Also, you got a slow order that for Preacher's Curve and for Susan's. You also, again, as in the other, as the scheduled train, you have your engine number. So in this case, once you have your throttle, you would dial up 82, and you will caboose 120. In this case, when you OS'd, that get your allow you to use your clearance form A out, the dispatcher would have asked you for your engine number, again, the number of cars, and here in this case, the caboose. Also in that train pack number 2, because we're going out with a train, and we're only going to look at 2 of the cards. You notice that here, what you have here is the waybill on the railroad. And my waybills consist of the car card, which is the white card. On the top one is the white card. Then on the right side, the half of the 3x5 is the shipment card. And there are 14 sessions set up with various shipment cards to route. It's an industry-based system. So in this case, when you combine the shipment card, it would be like on the prototype when the clerk receives a phone call from an industry, what he needs a car, whether it be an empty and it could be he's getting a loaded one. This would be a waybill that would be made up, and that now is in your train pack. You notice the other one below has a blue line around the car card. That's to designate a house car or a home road car. But you notice both of these are carrying their hoppers. The yellow, of course, says it's a enclosed hopper, and also they're carrying silica sand, which is used by the glass plant to produce glass, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So anyway, again, this time Jeff is doing the OSing, so he's got permission. Dispatcher again has put you on sheet now, or you've OS'd or you're on his sheet. So here's Jeff. He's got the train. There's his train. He's now going to got his throttle, and he's headed out of town. First, when you get out of Northfield, there's the bridge area. You see the first curve it's Preacher's Curve. Obviously, you can see with the church or the rectory and the school that you can understand why it became known as Preacher's Curve. Now remember, that's what you had a slow order for. So you should be down to a very slow speed. Way back, I actually do have a speedometer on the railroad, that a digital speedometer that operators can check their train speeds. So Jeff, being, of course, an experienced operator, has run the curve at 14 miles an hour. He's already looking up ahead for the rest of his, where the train is going to head. He's moving up. This is what we call the High Line. And here he's reached Susan's Curve, which again, you have, remember, a slow order for 15 miles an hour on Susan's Curve. We proceed on by, and you're going to go up the remainder of the High Line, which you see here. And here the train is approaching. There's the 2 hoppers that we are going to track in our train. Of course, if you were operating, you would be responsible to take care of all the other cars. Tonight, we'll just look at those 2 hoppers and what will happen. Here, the train is of course, now going across the bridge here, but you notice that there is a red caboose on the end. Now, and the reason I threw Joe's, as you see Joe's caboose 120 on there, is my railroad is in 1955, and still at this time, prior to pooling cabooses, conductors used to be usually assigned to a caboose, and they would have that they did all the housekeeping, etc., maintained the interior. So it was kind of their home away from home. And we still have Joe, who isn't retired. He's the last guy. All the rest of the cabooses on the railroad have been pooled, but not Joe. He's 120. His seniority allows him still to he grabs the Randolph turn because he feels it's one of the easier jobs on the railroad. So we continue on the High Line until we're approaching Sussex. And in Sussex, there is no work. If you remember on you continue on down the line. Now, at Sussex, there is the main line, obviously, is on the left side. The siding is Berry siding. And during operating sessions at Berry siding, you will pass quite a few trains. Normally, you as the Randolph turn will have gotten out early enough, but however, number 3 left Minneapolis at 6:10. You left at 6:10. That leaves in about 10, 15 minutes after your train. So if you should be late, or your train is made up of cars that came from maybe either Northfield Industries, also that came off the Milwaukee. If you remember, that waybill has the silica hoppers came in from the Milwaukee. They were brought in by a transfer. And in this case, if that happens, and some of those cars off Milwaukee, or you might get late. So in that case here, when Matt was running the train a couple sessions ago, that occurred where you see number 3 from Minneapolis, which is the Sunrise Special, is sitting there coming out of the tunnel, or that's West Tunnel City. So Matt was asked by the dispatcher, you get on the Barry siding and wait till the scheduled train, because he's the extra. Scheduled trains obviously take priority over extras. But so it can happen. It doesn't happen in most sessions. The Randolph turn normally is on its way past the Tunnel Cities switch beforehand. However, here you have, when we're back to our train that Jeff was running, you notice he stopped. If you look carefully, there is another call. There's a call on signal again down there at the tunnel portal. You also, if we remember your order, there was a line in there that says you must set the main line for the branch in Tunnel City. And that's what Jeff was doing here. He's setting that switch so he can proceed to, which is the Tunnel City East, where you catch the branch. So there's the order. He's now cleared. He's set. He's coming into onto the branch line here. He moves on down the branch. He's passing Tunnel City, that's operated off by a train, the Little Chicago turn. That's part of that job. But so the Randolph, you strictly are going to work Randolph. You can coming around into Randolph now, and here Jeff is just starting to slow down and come into town. When Matt was running it, usually whether it be whoever the operators, if you were, normally you will have to now take a look at that train pack. Our 2 hoppers, you notice, are back there next to the 120 caboose 120 or Joe's caboose. But you want to look through the train pack, see what work you're going to do. And if you look there also on the fascia, you got the telephone. Obviously, you OS on arrival and you will OS when you depart. But we'll look at that a little bit closer here in a minute. So here are our 2 hoppers. And if you remember, so these are going to get set out. We can see it, Anchor Glass Plant. And you notice there's a number underneath. For the yard masters, when they put a train together, they're required to block the trains. And this is the industry blocking number, as you would find on all the prototype railroads. You would, in the M&NS, no exception. And so my Minneapolis Northland, there is a full blocking number system. If you were working as a yard master in Minneapolis, you block trains from low to high. If you're working Northfield, you work from obviously the opposite way. But in our case anyway, in the Randolph turn, we have 2 waybills for those hoppers that we will, and you also notice the instructions tell you what's set up. We'll look at that in a minute. So anyway, this is the glass plant, or Anchor Glass. There are 2 hoppers that are currently in there. You as the operator, of course, will pull those, and you will put the 2 cars that are in our train. You will work and set them out at the Anchor Glass. And you notice that's where I said now in the instructions, you as an operator now have to know where to put that card. Okay, here is the card area, or with the card holder for the town of Randolph. You notice that instruction card said you put them on one day, and that happens to be, if you notice directly, on SC or day 1. When this system went into, when I made a gentleman and myself put this system together, about 25 years ago. And at that time, we thought, not knowing any better, we used ABC, much smarter. So as any industry or system, you find improvements. We should have used day 1, 2, and 3. So some of my old cards still have the alpha, but the new ones have tell you what pocket. So it's 1 day. You drop those 2 in. You notice also, as a Randolph operator, you do have a pickup to make at this town. There's 1 card in there. Normally, there can be quite a few more. Then, so here, Jeff is obviously now working, which you would be as an operator. You've broken the train down. You've made the setouts at the anchor, and you will continue with the other setouts and pickups that you have. Now, when Matt was running the train, he had to give it a thought about, wait a minute, how about what size, how many cars can I put in that industry? So every town or every station, as the prototype calls them, sometimes they call it stations. You have your Randolph siting capacity. Anchor plant can take 4 cars, 3 at the sand track, which we spotted our 2 hoppers, or you did. And there's an interior loading slot for 1. Food producers, as you can see, takes 2, General Tire and Wild Dine Team Track. And if you the map, all the industries have their names on them, so you are able to locate. If you were here, even as an operator for the first time, based with the industry map and looking at the industry names, you should be able to complete your assigned task. So here, Jeff again is just finishing up. He's now got his train. If you notice, it's turned around. He's ready to go back. And Joe is happy. He's on the tail end again. And we pulled those 2 hoppers we pulled. Notice they're again in front of the caboose for the return trip. So Joe, here, Jeff is a good operator. You as a good operator would now check your train pack that you put together, making sure it's in the order your cars are in the train for the return trip. And there you would go back. So basically, it's just the return. Jeff would return to Northfield. Here's just an example of, you've seen already some of these. There are many orders on the railroad, such as the far right, where you see a little Chicago turn that takes a siding to meet a train. On the railroad, there are 21 orders that are already pre-cut, or these are in the train packs or at stations. And it's just that after these orders, as you move trains along, they will come from the dispatcher. We go to verbal orders. Some railroads, they actually write orders and they have a clerk. That to a lot of the guys is boring. They want to run trains. So we don't have a clerk job here. We do everything via verbal order, via like I say, the dispatcher. And on the prototype, of course, you have the rule books, which tell you. I have a collection of these. This is a collection. It's a few of the ones I have in my collection. You'll notice down in the lower right corner, you have the Minneapolis St. Paul St. Marie Railway Company, specifically for that railroad, as the Minnesota Transfer, very slow railroad. But on the other hand, notice when you look at the left one, that one rule book serves quite a few railroads, including, like the Great Northern, the NP you see there are just a few. So they can later in the early years, each railroad normally had their own. In later years, they would have the combined book. I'm sorry. One other, you notice in the model world, obviously there on the left, you have a station agent book, which again tells you how to run the local station, what you do, keeping train sheet, orders, etc. And in hobby, we have had 2 really good books published. And the first there you see 19 East, a copy 3. And that if you're interested in timetable and trade order operation, I would really encourage you to add that to your library. Also, the SIG group, as many of you are aware, if you're part of the SIG group, in the U.S. here in the country. They their code book, it's the condensed codes of operating rules, which would be like it's good for all the railroads, and it has all that same information in there. So anyway, we've now run a scheduled train. You've been part of the extra. So now if you come on over and we'll put the throttle in your hand, give you a train, and you'll be able to run on the railroad. And obviously, if you're interested at all in the operating system, it's on my blog up there, okay? And a lot of you maybe have taken a look, maybe not. But anyway, I am now going to bail out of here, and I'm going to stop the share. And if you have questions, I will be glad to take questions. No questions.
Nice job, Lester. That was amazing. Really great.
Well, I'm glad like I say, hopefully you can now run a train on a railroad. And one of these days, if you're in Albert Lee,
Yeah.
Tuesday, third Tuesday of the month, every month. We've been running it since 1974.
Wow. That's pretty good.
So we got a few years on the
50 years.
track.
How many guys?
That's right.
How many guys work with you on that?
Okay, full crew on that crew board. The full crew is 9, including dispatcher. 8, so it's 9-person crew. We have a couple ladies in the Twin Cities. They're good operators. So I don't want to use guys because it's persons are running, but it takes a 9-person crew, including dispatcher.
And I already know I have at least 2.
Pardon? Any other questions regarding?
Are
Lester?
regular-
Go
Are
ahead.
they regular operators?
No, what it is well, we have 9 we have a round robin group that I started in about 1974 with 4 guys, and that has grown to 9. Normally somebody's on vacation, somebody might be sick, they don't want to get out at this time of year, they don't want to go in the cold weather. I normally end up, there are times where there's all 9 of us together. In the 9-person regular group, our round robin group, we moved to out of our 9 people, we have 8 operating railroads. And again, there are two of us are timetable and train order. The others have their various schemes. But of that crew, I normally will right now in the winter, on average, been having 6 to 5 out of the crew. So then it becomes, I have a regular board for a crew call that I send out, and I have about 3 that come off the extra board. 3 to 4 operators come off the extra board normally, and that's pretty set too. And the reason for that is you saw that if you came as an operator or with a group, we would use, like I said, we would draw a number with 1 to 9 for seniority. If you came, a lot of people don't like that dispatch, so I would provide a dispatcher. But what I was going to say is that my crew, I have a seniority, and so when they come to a session, out of the 9, a next session they move up a slot. So the top, everybody during the year, which is 12 months, if they come every time, they're going to guarantee they're going to get first choice, because number 1 always has first choice of jobs. So you move up the seniority list. If you do not attend a session and you skip for whatever, then you drop to the bottom of the list, you lose your seniority. And when you asked about the normal guys with their seniority, if they are not coming, even though they're dropped to the bottom, if I call you and off the extra board, which if it were one of you or off my extra board, you fill the slot. So you get the seniority slot of the operator that did not show up that evening. So you may be on the bottom, you could be first or second for choice of job. So we try to follow the prototype here as close as I can. And so the seniority system, by the way, it wasn't around until we began that this year. I decided it was time. We still got Joe, who's got top seniority. You remember his caboose. So, but anyway, so we decided we would have a true seniority system on the railroad for operators.
Lester, I'm just starting the paperwork for my layout. I was wondering if you could post the spreadsheet on the emails.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I will do that to the group. What you want, the dispatcher sheet?
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at.
Okay, I'll put the dispatcher sheet on the group. I'll send it out.
Thank you.
And if there's any other, I'll be glad, or if you have my email, you can get any other paperwork if you're interested in, or if you ever need help with a system when you're setting up, I'll be glad to try to assist you via. And if you provide airfare, I'm available.
Consultation,
Pardon?
consultation fees.
And be aware that if you're going to put in an industry-based system, I have the 14-day schedule. You can come here 14 months, you'll never see the same because
Same schedule.
of the 14 scheduled, plus the cars rotate. Like this last session, which is average, 28 new cars come on the railroad through the interchanges, and obviously all the cars that were on the interchanges get boxed and put away in the cabinet. That happens every single session. So I can't restage in just minutes or a few hours. It takes me several days to restage the railroad for each session.
Very cool.
Excellent.
No other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you, Lester. That
Oh,
was
you're
great.
welcome.
Appreciate you putting that together for us, and we will we'll be back at it next week. If you are interested in presenting, let me know. I don't know if Jason will be available next week or not, but we'll play that by ear, and look forward to seeing everybody next week. Have a great Thursday.
All right.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys.
Good week.
Bye-bye.
Oh, you're welcome.